I'd watch Ruby's antics in the cavern and wonder, what's going on here? She seemed to be going round and round, touching all kinds of things, but never finishing any of it. Kind of like a dust devil in the desert. You know it has been there by the tracks. After some time, however, I began to see a pattern in those tracks, some subtlety amid the chaos. After a little bit of cajoling, after all I am something of a ham, I ended up at Cavern Communication Network. Back in the day when it was a group of cavern players interested in telling stories and doing podcasts. However, the podcast company group didn't really understand the goals of the cavern players, and the Cavern Today show didn't want to bother with a troupe of would-be stage actors. Ruby asked me what she could do to bring them together. But I, with my experience of the deep fissures within the cavern community, told her the same thing that I'm telling her now about this documentary. Explorers with aspirations beyond exploring don't really want my advice. They just want somebody to tell them how great they are, with encouragement and approval and permission. I pretty much encourage everyone to go ahead and do their project. There have been a few that I didn't really like, but that's their business. So I told her to go on with it, regardless of who criticizes. Now, the next week at Music Night, when I play music for whoever happens to gather, Ruby requested a song, The Voice by the Moody Blues. I play requests if I have them, and I only have music I like, so it's not a problem. But Ruby took this as some kind of conspiratorial sign or agreement with whatever she was doing, or that I had consented to something, I don't know, I'm not sure what. Much later, she told me I was consenting to her decision to look for investors. Investors? What do I know about investors? Investors for what? And then everything kind of got quiet, but I'm still actively working to bring music and pontification to the cavern. But I'm a little concerned about playing any more requests from Ruby. What step onto a slippery slope might I be taking with the next one? My approach to things is pretty straightforward. Hers has curlicues written in the cavern's floor.
When Lord Chaos played my request that music night in the winter of 2005, I was convinced he understood the complexity of the Teledahn situation. In order to find investors, I needed to provide some proof. In addition to the maps in Sharper's office and the delivery issues involved in complicated linking of raw materials, I needed to supply soil samples to other explorers who shared my lens prescription and penchant for a story that makes total sense to me. One night I snuck into Teledahn, lifted up the crates, scooped out 2 spoonfuls of sludge, and linked back to my lab to find the webs that I had collected in the spring of 2003. Dolly was on her way out of my office.
Hello, everyone. This is Dolly D'warlia. Nice to meet you. All right, here we go. Okay, we are starting now. Oh, yes. Well, now, I had no idea that Ruby collected dusty cobwebs. Oh, no, those cobwebs she is talking about did not look like specimens to me. The entire CCN hood is dusty. Mold is collecting in the vents and the air. Oh, that is suspect. I think one should not breathe it even now. Yes. Well, I thought a nice dusting was in order. Tidy it up a bit and make it more inviting. Then, everyone will return and start to work again. Now, I had no idea the reporters were out working in the field. People were collecting things, I had no idea anyone was collecting anything. My niece, Ghaelen D'Lareh, has said she has started collecting things too, and her collection should not be touched. Well, all right. Oh, and I expect Mr. Tyion collects things as well. Now, I suppose there are some stories to tell in those things he is collecting.
During the fall of 2010, Ruby O'Diggy published a paper at the Midtown Arts Museum Poughkeepsie to Miwe Anniversary Symposium. She uncrated several boxes of styrofoam packing. She mentioned in her paper and presentation, that went on way too long, how much packing was used to ship silk samples out of Teledahn. The crates were ancient, likely produced during the Ishak period. The styrofoam packing was much less old, carbon dated 1987, or about the same time that John Fighting Branch Lofton discovered a couple of stalactites, another few stalagmites, and the underground civilization some now call the Denny Cavern. Mrs. O'Diggy tried to explain, without much success, that these new shipments were part of a plan to ship out parts of Teledahn.
I still can't see why Ruby is going with this ski lift of thought. Her conclusions are half-baked, her prologue and codas are too convenient, and she's going to anger one too many explorers. But then again, none of that matters to Ruby. What she enjoys doing is causing a fuss. If a fuss results in two people talking about Teledahn, the cavern, or Riven, it will make her day.
What concerns explorers who agree with me, including Matt Dutton, is the numbers. By numbers, I mean how many times the sun revolves around the land masses depicted on the map, and how long it is expected that any explorer will count those revolutions. There are hundreds of explorers who bake Arcana pellets and record their data. I don't suppose they could tear themselves away from this important, life-changing responsibility. For thousands of years, the sun has been circulating. There is scientific evidence that the sun is overheating a few planets, the Earth's crust and the Earth's core. If you calculate how many times the sun loops in the scope and won't stop, particularly when the Teledahn scope is not working, you can calculate the number 25 to the power of 14. Then you multiply that number by the speed of sound identically heard through a paper cup and a cell phone using AT&T 3G services. The same number will be dropped by 3. I know about the drop because I use this phone regularly. The circling and looping of the Teledahn sun can be compared to the Mayan looping of the solar sun that is being accused of this heat. Whether or not the heat accusation is true is of no consequence. More important is the shift of ages, or what is being called the shift of ages. It is possible that during one of these shifts, Teledahn port opened to underground neighbors without the necessity of a complicated linking process. Not to suggest that linking is difficult, but the transport of hairpins, shampoo, toiletries, luggage, and a change of clothes that doesn't look like clothes from the same trunk is nearly impossible to smuggle into the cavern. Everyone knows that in every opposite hexagram all lines are reversed. The only way to determine how many days the sun shines in any part of the sharper map is to graph those lines and calculate them forward and backward. The process is much like baking pellets with every recipe an explorer can imagine. With the resulting toss of an algae brick wad into the lake water, the water table will rise. The lake appears to be lighter, but is not a bit lighter. It is merely a surface reflection. The surface water is filtered, hazy, and weighs less, when all those insolvent pellets are lining the lake floor and feeding variant plants. One day those suffocating plants will suck all the existing oxygen out of the cavern, like for air. It's a great way to start mucking up what the Maker has skillfully written and laid down. Now back to the sun, the heat source, and a friend of the plant. Of course, this phenom can only be seen by explorers who wear hip waders, and the hip waders need to be delivered by air, specifically by Sharper's hot air balloon or a wormhole in the link. If you don't believe me, ask someone about novelty theory, a new and important physics that explains the downward motion of the universe and how it exposes us to ultraviolet rays, gamma rays, krypton rays, and algicide. Algicide is not a ray, but it does itch.
The Teledahn Connection is a connection. There is already a sequel to the Teledahn Connection in the works, working title, The Mystery Behind Carol Big Treats. No one can stop them from coming, either the treats or the films, regardless of how many letters CCN gets, begging its producers to quit making the controversial episodes or the treats. And so, until next time, this is your host, Mr. Host, saying, Shora the Shem.